Hello, Miss Irons. I hope you're having a lovely day. For this oral poetry assignment, I've chosen to analyze the poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. I'll start by reading it aloud. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening, Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake, to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Robert Frost's Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening is a simple and short poem that produces great ambiguity when read. One must not be fooled by Frost's ability to construct what seems to be an uncomplicated poem, because this method allows the reader to visualize various interpretations of what the poem could be about. Frost incorporates many examples of literary and sound devices throughout the poem to help strengthen its message while at the same time keeping the word count to a minimum. The strongest uses of poetic devices that effectively enhance the meaning of the poem are the use of metaphors, personification, and diction. These qualities that Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening contain are what allow this poem to easily be named the greatest poem in the world. Throughout the entirety of the poem, there is one significant metaphor that is subtly expressed. The woods is an extended metaphor for death, which echoes within Frost's poem. However, the first instance where the subject of death can be seen is not from the word woods, but instead from the final two lines of the last stanza. The last line is a repetition of the line before, which reads, "And miles to go before I sleep." When reading the first mention of this line, one may believe that the speaker is referring to the literal meaning of the phrase, which indicates the long journey ahead before the speaker can go to bed. The repetition of the same line is used to emphasize that there is a deeper meaning to this expression, which allows one to infer that, "and miles to go before I sleep," could be hinting at the many years the speaker has until death. This is when the reader can reread the poem through this lens and confirm that the woods is in fact an extended metaphor for death. In the third stanza, Frost writes, "The woods are lovely, dark, and deep." What stands out from this phrase is the alliteration of the D's in dark and deep. The central focus put on these words to describe the woods encourages the connotation of death, because death could be described as dark or deep. The connotation of death can also be seen in the opening line of the poem, where the speaker says, "Whose woods these are, I think I know." The woods in this case refers to the grave which the speaker has come across. The metaphoric meaning of death that is portrayed through the woods effectively serves to clarify the connotation of Frost's poem. In addition, personification is used to strengthen the meaning of death within the poem. The occurrences of personification is not difficult to spot and can be identified in the second and third stanza. The beginning of the second stanza reads, "My little horse must think it queer," and in the third stanza Frost writes, "to ask if there is some mistake." Instantly, one can recognize that horses cannot think or ask of anything, so these statements must have been included for some greater purpose. The expressions used to personify the horse allow the reader to infer that there must be something wrong with being in the presence of the woods, and that there is something wrong with the woods itself. The horse is used as a symbol of warning because the speaker is so intrigued by the woods, and this can be seen when Frost writes, "He gives his harness bells a shake." This imagery that is created allows one to hear the noise of the horse's bells, which is effective in the poem because the horse's bells are what alarm the speaker about the danger of the woods. All of these references made to the horse lead to the conclusion that the speaker is so lured by the dangerous woods because of the contemplation of suicide. In the beginning of the fourth stanza, after the last mention of the horse in the third stanza, Frost writes, "The woods are lovely, dark, and deep," but I have promises to keep." While having the knowledge that the woods are harmful and related to death, one can interpret that the speaker is tempted to commit suicide because of the beauty of the woods, which can be seen through the word lovely. The reader backs away from these suicidal thoughts because of the promises that are needed to be kept, which are related to the responsibilities back where he lives. This poem would not be as effective without the mentions of the horse being able to think or ask, because the reader would not be able to conclude that the woods are intriguing because of its suicidal appeal. The final way that death can be seen in the poem is through the diction of the words in the title, stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Usually, when one thinks of woods, one can imagine being in the woods rather than being by the woods, as mentioned in the title. When in the woods, one may be surrounded by trees, but when by the woods, one may be next to the woods and simply gazing at the trees. These denotations are important because the title using the word by instead of in supports the idea of contemplating suicide. The speaker is not within the woods, so the speaker is gazing at the woods and thinking, and because the woods is a metaphor for death, one can finalize that the title suggests that the speaker is considering death. This connotation can only be discovered after reading the poem and analyzing it to find out what its hidden meaning. The diction used in the title is effective towards the poem because it validates that the poem is about death and the contemplation of suicide. Frost's poem is remarkable because it incorporates extensive uses of poetic devices while keeping the oral flow of the poem simple to excellently describe and portray the overall message of death. This allows Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening to be considered the greatest poem in the world. Robert Frost's well-thought-out and intelligent way of crafting the poem is what elevated Frost to deserve this grand title.